Hello, I'm Derek Wheatley and welcome to episode 35 of the Weekly podcast. Thank you very much for listening during the week and for all your support and your sharing the posts we put up on Facebook and Instagram and all those things like that. A big thanks again to Michaela Fox for last week's episode. It was great chatting to her about photography, and like I said in last night's live Facebook thing, that it was interesting for somebody like me to hear a photographer say that anybody can do it, and it just, it takes a little bit of practice and it's like a muscle you need to work on and stuff like that. So that's kind of good, and we all have camera phones, so we can go take photos all we want, and I think it's a good pastime for anybody to have, really. Like I said, I did my Facebook live last night. We do it every Sunday. People tuning in live and people tuning in afterwards. Thanks very much for allowing me to. Oh, we've had the virus. No, we're all right. Don't mention viruses. That was not supposed to happen. But yeah, so we had thank you very much for allowing me to sing some songs and maybe get them wrong sometimes and have a bit of crack. But that's enough about me. I'm going to introduce my guest. She's a hypnotherapist, a sports therapist, and a Pilates instructor. And her name is Cecile Jacquot. How are you, Cecile?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm grand now that I got your name right. I was just talking to Cecile before about the pronunciation of her name. I was a little bit worried about it. Thank you very much for coming out on your day off.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much. And a short history of your upbringing.
Okay. Well, I was born in La Réunion, which is a little island off the coast of Africa. And we spent a few years there, and then we moved back to France only to move away to Tahiti, which is in the Pacific Ocean. Yeah. So that was, it's like a postcard, really. That's pretty much it. And then we moved back to France when I was 13. And then when I got to university, I did a degree in art history and archaeology, only to kind of get cut short because we were having a lot of strikes at that time. Right, French people love to go on strike. So that was a bit hard to deal with. And I just kind of decided all of a sudden that I would move to Canada and keep on doing my degree over there, which I did. So I studied in Quebec and then Montreal. I graduated with an archaeology degree. And then I decided again, all of a sudden, without any reason, to do a master in primatology, studying primates. And from then, I went to Madagascar to do my field work. And when I came back, I decided that wasn't for me. Stopped my master, studied to become a personal trainer. Did personal training in Calgary. Then I got kind of the soft version of getting kicked out of Canada because my visa ran out. Moved back to France. Was just kind of lost for a while, and I decided to study athletic therapy because a friend of mine in Calgary was doing it in the gym, and there wasn't that many places you could do it. It was Canada again, the States, any kind of English speaking country, really. And I got into a few schools, and I visited Athlone one day, and I don't know, people were just nice, and there was something nice about it. So nice. I just went for it and moved here, studied in IT. And while I was studying athletic therapy, I got to meet a hypnotherapist. She came and did like a little speech about it. And I was very skeptical, and I thought she was a crazy lady, and she wasn't.
Good.
She is not. She's fantastic, and it blew my mind. In an hour, she had me, and I studied to become one in parallel to the athletic therapy, and that's. And I'm here now, and I'm here in Athlone.
You were very busy. You kept busy all the time, especially it sounds like after school, especially the kind of subjects you chose and. So what was the name of the island you were born on?
It's called La Réunion.
And that's obviously a French...
Yeah, so now I'm a bit confused about the statues. It keeps changing and everything. But at the time, I think it was French. Yeah. So I was born there,
And Tahiti, how long did you live there?
I lived there for 7 years.
Oh, that's quite a journey you've had, to the different places and things like that. Yeah. I was thinking, I went to school in Dublin. That's about it. The rest is that low.
I got lucky. It's all my parents. Thanks to them.
And so, how long have you been in Athlone then?
Athlone, I think it's over 4 years now.
Okay.
That'd be my 5th year. Yeah.
Right. And would you say that's like home to you now, or?
I think it has become, see, I think because of my upbringing, home is a very relative concept to me. I can be at home anywhere I want to be at home in, like, you know, France, Canada, anywhere. So yes, I feel great here, but if you move me to Italy tomorrow, I probably love Italy and feel Italian. So yeah, but right now it's home, and my fiance is from here, and
he's from Athlone.
He's from Athlone, right, okay. Yeah. So, you know, I guess yes, it is home, but I wouldn't mind moving again at some point.
Yeah, that's good. It's always good to have a kind of an open mind about those things. Like just don't set down your roots too quickly. But so when did you first become aware of mental health?
I think for me, I struggled with depression a lot when I came back from Tahiti. It was really hard for me. For years, I was depressed. And I think you could say I became aware of it then, but it was a gradual process. I think it's a very hard thing to say, when do I become aware of mental health? Yeah. I think I was just so lost for years. For me, I didn't become aware of it. I don't know, it was just the way I was. It wasn't something to become aware of. It was just me and the struggles I was going through. So I guess you could say at that time, but really when did I start reflecting on it? Maybe when I started hypnotherapy, it was more structured, and I had clients telling me their stories, and I could kind of take a step back and be like, oh yeah, that's mental health, and that's what's happening. But when it happened to me, it was just my life, and I didn't have an awareness really of it. I think that's what
I think that, like, it's very hard to for me anyway, it's very hard to pinpoint when it started. Like, when I probably had it before I became aware of what mental health was in general, you know, because it wasn't in schools at the time and things like that. So I think I understand what you mean. It's very hard to kind of pinpoint the exact you know, place where it started. So speaking of hypnotherapy, then you're the owner of Orange Cloud Hypnotherapy. And where did Orange Cloud come from?
So when you study hypnotherapy, you have techniques to get into that hypnotic state. Usually they're little stories, or you could call that little games almost. And one of the first little story I kind of learned about was this story called Orange Cloud. And when I was looking for a name, it just kind of, I guess it remained with me because it's the first time I realized that it was working. You know, after all that skepticism and, oh my God, how can that work? That worked. So I guess that's my introduction to the world of hypnotherapy. Nice.
And so how can hypnotherapy help with, I suppose, like I watched your video. So you said, like, chronic pain was, the chronic was the word I was using with it, but persistent is what you described it as. So how can hypnotherapy help with persistent pain?
So first, the word, it used to be called chronic pain for the longest time, but the idea with the word chronic is that there is no end to it. So persistent pain, you're kind of lightening the concept itself. So it's starting to change to persistent pain, but chronic pain is still kind of the word it is known as, but they're starting to move away from it. And really, I kind of got introduced to it with my sports therapy degree, because you have acute pain and chronic pain, and chronic pain is really hard to treat. When I did my placement, I did a placement in Norway, and with a chiropractor actually, but he was fantastic. He was great, and he had a lot of chronic pain patients, and he had seen them for years. And it's I guess for some people it almost becomes a lifestyle and a definition, and when you have to deal with a definition, it gets really hard to treat because they identify themselves so much with the persistent pain. So he was really experiencing issues, and when I came back, we actually got into it a little bit more in school, and what came out was that nowadays chronic persistent pain is starting to get treated with what is called the biopsychosocial model. So people realize that, okay, I can dig my fingers into your muscles, I can massage, I can manipulate all you want, but it doesn't seem to have as much result as we want to. But if I start talking about maybe your social environment, the pressures you are under, how do you see the world? And if I start switching that around and maybe bringing more of a positive view on the way you see the world, on the way you behave, then, now I'm seeing results. And I was just looking at that, and it kind of changed in my head that it was everything I was doing in hypnotherapy. It's exactly the same. It's switching the way you think about the world, the way you feel about the world, the way you behave about the world. That's hypnotherapy. And they were telling me that in physiotherapy, you're using the same thing, but you are calling it the biopsychosocial model. And when you talk about hypnotherapy to a physio, they're like, haha, ridiculous.
Okay.
But they are literally doing the same thing. So, I thought it was fantastic. So the way hypnotherapy works, people think pain. When you experience pain, let's say in your hand, people think the pain is actually in your hand. Okay, maybe there is, I don't know, there is something inside your hand that's painful. It might have been the case at the start. Maybe you injured your hand, something happened, you got messages sent to the brain, and the brain is like, okay, hang on, we need to protect the area. Send back messages that contain pain signals to the hand. So the brain is kind of putting that sensation like a bubble wrap around your hand. And that sensation is pain. But after 3 weeks, when the hand is actually healed and it's okay to maybe touch it and move it around without damaging it further, that bubble wrap is no longer needed. So the brain is going to remove it. In the case of persistent pain, that bubble wrap remains there. And it's hard to pinpoint why it happens for certain person and why it doesn't happen for other. But it's just... I'll give you an example. My mom had cancer and she's fine now, but she kind of, everything became so intense for her. And she got over the cancer, did all her treatment, and then she broke her leg. And for her, it was just, the world had something personal against her. Everything was directed at her. She was unlucky. She was doomed to be unhappy. All of that. So she actually developed persistent pain because it became so much more than the leg.
Right, yeah.
Right, and that's why it happens for most people. So then the hypnotherapy can get into there and switch that signal around. So if the brain is sending pain to the hand, hypnotherapy stops the signal. Okay. And it does that by directly targeting the brain and the mind and the way you think, because when you go into trance, you are accessing the subconscious part of the mind, the deep part of the mind, which is the one sending the signals. Yeah. So you get in there and you are like, get away signal, there is no more pain, your hand is fine, everything is fine. Yeah. No need for the bubble wrap again.
And how, so this, I could be mixing this up in my brain, right? But it's not the first time that's happened on this podcast. But so if you have someone who comes in who says that they are somebody who is someone who has chronic pain, because chronic does sound like it's a worse word really anyway, you know, but they label themselves as a chronic pain. And I think, talk about depression, there's a difference between someone who labels themselves as a depressed person and someone who labels themselves as a person who goes through periods of depression. You know, that's like, you know, a way, like you said, the way of thinking, the mindset and things like that. So when you're going into that, when someone's coming to visit you, and they see themselves as chronic pain sufferer, persistent pain sufferer, is it the kind of, when you're going into someone's mind, is it kind of bringing something down a different route, or is it completely dismantling their way of thinking, as in someone who is a chronic pain sufferer, do you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I get patients or clients, I guess, who suffer from persistent pain, everything they can talk about is pain and how does it feel, and oh look, I moved, I felt pain, and I do that, I feel pain. So they are completely involved in their pain. They are the pain. Pain is everywhere. They are pain. So I think one of the first steps, and first we have a discussion about how does persistent pain work, how does pain work, and most of the time they had never heard about that. So that's the first thing. It's kind of like, whoa, okay, that's how it works, first thing. But you know, it's important, you need to be aware of how it works, because already you're changing the story. Then I avoid the word pain entirely, and I tell them to avoid it entirely. And then from there, it really depends on people. I guess with your question, I don't see really the difference.
Yeah.
They're completely linked. You go in the mind, and you are just gonna maybe tell them to imagine that they can walk and it feels completely comfortable, and maybe then you're gonna go further and make them imagine that there is a signal going from their mind to the hand, and transform that signal. How would you transform it so that it feels more comfortable?
Yeah.
They transform that, and maybe then you get them to see themselves in 10 years from now and how their life is without that discomfort. And so I guess in that way, when you make them see themselves in the future, you can kind of show them that they are not their pain. So that's, that's that part of your question. You're not your pain.
Yeah.
And the rest of it, I don't know. They're so I don't see the difference between those two questions, really.
I do know what you mean. I suppose when I think of it, I talk about CBT a lot because I did it and I thought it was the best therapy that I got right. So the idea was to kind of that was explained to me was I was going to go down a different route. I was still going to be aware of everything that I've gone through. The fact that depression and anxiety kind of are always there and they're a possibility at all times, but it was just a different route and a different way of thinking. And that's what I was kind of wondering about hypnotherapy. Is it just, you still see that you've had the pain? It's not an erasure of that.
No.
But it's just leading the client down a different path.
Oh, okay, got you. Yeah. No, you're still aware of it, and you will feel better after the session, but you will still have your persistent pain. Persistent pain built on years of experiencing it. So you are changing the way you look at your pain.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. You're changing the way you look at pain. You're changing that idea that pain will be there for the rest of your life. There is nothing you can do about it because pain is you and you are pain. You are challenging that idea, challenging the fact that pain is there forever. No, you can do something about it. You can take control. You can stop the signal. You created the signal. Your mind created the signal. Your mind can stop it. Okay, you're experiencing it, but I can give you techniques to manage it. I can give you back that feeling of control. And when you have it, then you can stop that signal, basically. So yeah, you go down a different route, but in part, it's a process. It's a continuum. You're going to keep on experiencing your pain. It's going to decrease, but be there. So you are changing the way you think about your pain. Yeah. So exactly. But
my questions are rarely they start all right and they fall away, but I'm glad we got the it's I think that's kind of it's people can't go into these sessions thinking it's a magic cure for all, and how successful, because obviously you've studied it and now you do it, how successful is it for persistent pain sufferers?
It is very successful. It's more successful than physiotherapy.
Really?
Oh yeah, because again, physiotherapy, you're working on the body. So I'm not saying that if a physiotherapist is using that biopsychosocial model, and the biopsychosocial model is giving little techniques. So every time you want to say the word pain, instead you say discomfort. Every time you think about pain, up you grab the thought and you move away from the thought. And it's all those little techniques that are working on the mind. So unless you're using that, when you do physiotherapy, your chances of success are fairly low. Hypnotherapy will work really well, especially after the first session. You're going to see the difference, but it is a process. It's going to take months, maybe. It took you years to build on that pain. It's going to take months, maybe years to first decrease it and ultimately get rid of it. But if you think about it, your mind created it. So if we change the way your mind thinks, it's just gonna work. That's how it came in. That's how it's gonna go out. There is nothing else really that you can do. You have to target the mind. So it is highly successful. But what I see really is people expecting the magic trick, and after the first session, they're like, "Well, I still, it's still there." And it is.
It's it must be, and we spoke a little before, just about it must be so hard for people who do suffer with these problems. On their mental health. And have you seen any of that? Like, is that something that obviously they're going to you to do with the pain, but have you seen that across kind of your sessions that people have have had some very bad mental health problems as well.
Of course, because just imagine you wake up, you're in pain. You go do something, you cannot do it, you're in pain. You lose your connection, you cannot go play football, you cannot go out. You have zero control over your life. So when you have that feeling of lack of control, then you have depression. People are so anxious that they find it hard to sleep. You find it hard to sleep, well, you get even more depressed, vicious cycle, and it just branches out on so many things. And and I experienced really strong vertigo for months. And same, I was getting wrapped up in myself, nothing else existed. I would talk about my vertigo to everyone, and that's what they do, right? They talk about it to everyone because they need to get it out. There is nothing else. You stop moving around because you're afraid that the vertigo or the pain is going to get triggered. It's like a spider web. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse until you get back control over it, which hypnotherapy helps you do. You get back control.
We had Teresa on back, I think it was episode 20, I might be wrong, but I talked to her about the initial meeting. So the person is more than likely going to be a bit anxious about it, right? Because they don't know, if they haven't done hypnotherapy before, it's a strange thing. They also might be a little bit skeptical about it.
Completely.
Like, what would you, because you said it kind of in the intro there that you were a bit skeptical about it as well. Like, what would you say to those people who are at home, maybe listen to this and they are going through some persistent pain? What would you say?
What would I say to them? I would say exactly what I just said about how the pain got there in the first place, so that they understand the importance of the mind. The pain is not in the hand, the pain is in the mind. It is projected. It's a construct of the mind. So from there, I'll ask them, how do you think we can target the mind if we are staying away from the mind? With hypnotherapy, you target the mind. And people who are skeptical, I usually use the analogy, and I'm sure Teresa probably used it too, of when you drive for a long time in a road, especially a motorway, and you kind of get so wrapped up in your thoughts, you don't realize how far you've been, and you kind of just get out of it at some point. Oh my God, it's been 5 minutes, and I have no awareness of that, those 5 minutes. So that's hypnotherapy. So you get into that state on a daily basis when you're wrapped up in a book, focused on a movie, when noises around you don't matter, when people call you but you can't hear them because you're so wrapped up in something. That's hypnotherapy. It's that state where you're hyper focused on something. So we all at some point in our life, and probably every day, go into trance. So that's something we are used to. So that's the first thing I would say as an example. Then the second example is, I would talk about the power of the words. So everything we are, like my name, I identify myself as a female. I'm sorry, everything I am, I can express it through words. Everything is words. Like, if you remove the words completely from your life, there is nothing left. And when you start with that, it makes sense that words are going to help you overcome anything, because if you can put a word on it, you can basically experience it. So if I can switch that word pain to discomfort, or to anything else, really, to I don't know, a color, it's red, okay, instead of pain, the redness. So anything else, if I change the word, I can change the concept behind it. I can change my life. And I give that example. At some point in your life, somebody said something to you that was probably not very nice. Oh, that was very nice, who knows? And it stayed with you, and it changed the way you behave, the way you thought about yourself, and it's very subtle. But every time you look in the mirror, if somebody mentions something about the way you look, every time you look at the mirror, you'll be like, oh, that guy did say that my nose was big, or something silly like that, but it stays there. So it's the words. Everything is words. And people understand that. They understand that idea of somebody saying something, and how it affects their life at some point. So I would talk about all those things, and then I usually do a few little tests to show them how it works, and then they're like, oh yeah, that's working. Yeah.
Well, this, like, if people aren't convinced by that, they'll never be convinced. Let me just get an ad in, and we'll get back to it. I never find the cursor, and then Fusion Training Centre, Monksland Athlone, a place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Centre or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre. Train like a warrior. I had like a 6-run ad there where I got everything right and I messed up that one. So I'm back to number one again. But explain to me what exactly Pilates is, if you would.
Yeah. First, I just have to mention that every time I say the word Pilates, when I talk to an English person, they're just looking at me. I think I pronounce it really, really badly.
Say it again.
Pilates.
I'd know what it was.
Yeah, I don't know. It just never works. They always look at me really blank. So Pilates is a method that was created a little bit after the war by Joseph Pilates, and he created that because people were lying on the bed and he wanted to find a way to get them moving and get their muscles activated from their bed, really. And it is a lot of things, and the definition kind of got lost over the years. For me, Pilates is a way to restore what we call neutral posture. Okay. So you would have, and again, that's complicated because neutral posture is the ideal posture. Okay. And when you do physiotherapy or sports therapy like I do, nowadays the idea is that there is no more ideal posture. So they kind of contradict each other, right, in that way. But Pilates is looking for ideal posture. And in that ideal posture, it is supposed to, your muscles are supposed to work the most efficiently, the most safely, so that you avoid injuries in the long term. And you're supposed to activate all muscles the right way. And you create all the exercises, balance, strengthening a muscle and releasing the other muscle. So you're working on balance in the body. You're also working on strengthening your core. So core is not just the abs, it will be your butt, basically. It will be your lower back, but it will also, of course, be your abs. It will be your pelvic floor muscles. So it's strengthening that center part of your body with the idea that once this is strong and stable, everything around it, so your arms, your legs, everything else can move appropriately because you are starting from a strong base. Okay. So but I find it funny because sports therapists are always recommending Pilates. Every time you are injured, they're like, oh, you should do Pilates. It's going to be great. Yes, it is great. It is a great method of training, but really anything that helps you get outside and move is great. Yeah. And there is no strong link that Pilates is going to fix everything, your lower back, your disc hernia, it's not true. And I always found it funny because people don't understand that there is actually no ideal posture. So that whole concept is kind of gone out the window for me. But Pilates is strengthening your core, and most of the exercises are core-based. And what I like about it, for me, what is great about Pilates is that it brings an awareness back to your muscles. Okay. So most people are going to squat and deadlift and do all the big stuff, and that's great. Pilates focuses on the small muscles, and that's where it's so powerful. Because we lose those muscles. If I tell you to think about your piriformis, sure, why not? If I tell you to think about your rotator cuff, what do you mean? Lats, do you know how your lats feel? Most people don't know how lats feel. So it's really bringing back that mind-body connection, which I find interesting when you work with hypnotherapy. You are bringing back the mind into the body. Again, chronic pain, I bring back my mind into my body. So so Pilates is an awareness of your body. And yes, you're going to get toned, and yes, you're going to get lean, and yes, you're going to be beautiful, but it is awareness, I think. And
when did you get into it?
When did I get into it? Quite recently, to be fair. I don't know why. I think I was just reading. I always trained that way. I started training when I was 20, when I moved to Canada. And for me, it was a huge help in overcoming my depression. My depression lasted for years, and it really helped to some extent, but it really helped. And for me, training, I started really soon to move away from regular training and big lifts and all that fantastic stuff. And I kind of played around with my body. I was looking for little exercises that would make me feel that a bit more, feel that muscle a bit more if I move it that way. Just like kind of make up new movements. So for me, it started like that. And I started reading about Pilates because Pilates is a bit like that. So I think it kind of, my interest got started like that. And then there is so much demand for it too. You have to admit, like, there is the business side to it too. Pilates is hugely popular. If you're training Pilates, you're kind of sorted in terms of the training world. So there was a business aspect to it. And also how I liked how framed it was. There is a method, those are the exercises, and you can move away from it. But there is a strong base, and I just like clarity, and I like things that are very framed. So it was great.
And when you so you say you were doing the lifting and things like that, you were training differently, which helped your mental health. Would you say the same about Pilates? Do you think that's very beneficial to your mental health?
I think so, because... And I noticed it, especially during the lockdown. I would do my Pilates every day and I would put my music and it just helped me refocus on the movements. It helped me think, and you have to breathe through it. There is a breathing pattern. So the breathing itself, like breathing is widely known as a way to relax and just take a step back. And because you're breathing, inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth on every single of the motion, you're getting that relaxation in, and you have to think, okay, I'm lifting my hand. Am I activating my lats? Okay, I am. It's just you're refocusing completely on your body. So everything that is in your mind kind of goes away for a while. Do
you think then that, just because when you're answering the question, when you say about hypnotherapy and stuff, you want the mind to focus on something in particular. Do you think that kind of moves into your Pilates as well? Like, I'm talking about you rather than just say if I was doing it, but I think it probably helps with your Pilates. Would that be right?
Does it help me? I don't know if it helps me, but I think maybe it's more a way of training that connection between the mind and the body. If you can see the link between the two, I think you can really do great things. And I think it's a good way of training that connection. I am thinking and my body is following.
Yeah.
And that's, again, when you're explaining hypnotherapy to people, when I think, great example, they have done studies about athletes, and they made them, and maybe you got that on the podcast already, and they made them think about, I don't know, doing a kick several times, and they just had to visualize it and how does it work, what muscles would be activated, and they found at the end that the muscles actually activated pretty much like 80% of what would have been activated if you had trained that kick physically.
All right.
So that really shows, and they did other studies like that, bicep curl, do it in your mind for weeks instead of doing it for real. 80%, I think, of the fibers or the augmentation was seen. So I think the Pilates and that example also shows you how thinking about your body makes your body react to the thinking. So then you go into the hypnotherapy. If you think about where the pain is and you change that idea of pain to maybe discomfort or tingling or anything different, well, really, you are actually making your body feel tingling or discomfort or something different. There is a link.
Yeah, like, have you ever actually tried meditation?
I have. It was hard for me. It was hard for me. But again, good example, I really, really got into it when I experienced my vertigo. Nothing else was working.
Yeah.
Nothing. And I downloaded, what's the name of that? Everybody has it now, Headspace.
Yeah.
And I did Headspace for anxiety. And it's the thing that helped me the most because I was controlling my thoughts. Well, not controlling, but I was noticing them. I was noticing my thoughts. I was like, okay, this is me freaking out. I know my body is experiencing that vertigo. I know what it is. It is a thought. It is negative for me. And then they tell you to kind of move away and keep going through your day and do that with every negative thought you have or thought in general. And that really, really helped. Yeah,
I found we had a couple of people on actually talking about meditation, and I think when I talk to other people about it, whether it's on the podcast or just, you know, out in the real world, a lot of people seem to struggle with it, and it's that whole thing of I find it so hard to get into my own head. It's very, very difficult for me to just sit there and, you know, Headspace was one thing. I have it on my phone actually. I must try and get back into it, but it's such a difficult kind of it's such a difficult thing to do for me. Like, and I am going to try hypnotherapy Because I want to see, now that I've talked to obviously two hypnotherapists now about it, I find it such a fascinating kind of, I was a skeptic, but I was getting it mixed up. Teresa set me straight on that, where I was kind of talking about hypnosis with that idea of people are on stage, you know.
Well, there is that too,
yeah. Whereas she's doing hypnotherapy, which is a completely different thing. And it's kind of, when it was just a little thing that she corrected me on, but I was like, it made a lot of sense, you know. So I do find meditation quite difficult. I ask about Pilates. My sister-in-law does Pilates, and she loves it. Like, I did yoga for quite a while. I don't know what the difference is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yoga for me is more, and again, maybe somebody who does yoga would disagree. I've done yoga. For me, it's more about flexibility. A lot of the yoga classes I took, they were just pushing you in those crazy, mind-blowing, twisted position. And well, it's not me. There was one form of yoga I really liked. What was it? They made an awful Netflix documentary about it. Yeah, Bikram.
Yeah.
I like that because it was more strength-based,
Yeah.
to my knowledge. And the other thing I don't like about yoga is the amount of folding forward they do. So they're always kind of folding forward in their body. And coming from a physio background, and for myself, I always had a bit of a weakness in my lower back. Folding forward really triggers my lower back pain. And for a lot of people, I do think it would trigger. I think it's a bit iffy on that one.
Yeah.
It's the amount of fold. And you spend your whole time kind of forward sitting. I think extension would be a bit more appropriate for the normal person going through its life. So for me, yoga is it's not my thing.
Yeah, I did it, like I said, did a bit. I do have a little bit of back pain, lower back pain. Just it sparks up sometimes, not there all the time. But that leaning forward is quite difficult for me. And then I was good at doing the core, stand up straight and stuff.
Me too, yeah.
But then I had Kieran McNally over here, and he told me, no, don't worry about that. Like you said about the posture, it's not about that. And I was like, I don't understand what I have to do anymore. You know?
I know. I think you have people that are very flexible and that need stability.
Yeah, yeah.
In that case, I will recommend Pilates because we work through stability.
Yeah.
You have people that are very, very, very stable, and maybe they would benefit for more movement, and then maybe go towards yoga. I think it depends what you have.
Yeah, yeah. It's that's the difficulty, I suppose, in a class, isn't it? Because if you're being told everybody's doing the same thing, I was doing it in my other room on YouTube, and I could skip stuff if it was giving me little problems and stuff, but I probably wasn't doing it correctly either. So I don't really know. I mean, I'm just going to read this out quickly. So listen, this is for the Moat Business College. The course is creative media, so if you're someone who enjoys photography, 3D animation, gaming or graphic design and have a genuine interest in the media industry, why not check out our creative media course at moatbusinesscollege.com today. Place is still available. Hopefully they teach perfect diction over there as well. I could probably... I had 2 ads and messed up both of them. So you're starting teaching classes over with our friend Elaine over at Westside Yoga. Yeah. Excited?
No, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I was teaching online throughout the lockdown. So I had a few group classes and I still have a few private classes. And it was nice, and it was actually a good exercise because I love to touch people and kind of I would touch a muscle and be like, that's why you should feel it. Or I would rearrange the positions. And of course, you cannot do that online. So it was a really good exercise to actually, again, work through your words. How can my words go into your mind to change your body? So that was really interesting from also a hypnotherapy point of view. Just finding the right image that triggers a reaction in your body. Yeah. If I tell you, oh, you're on all fours and you have to round your back, and most people would look at me like they would go the opposite way. They would kind of go into hyperextension. I was like, oh my God, why? Because in my head, it's so obvious that you have to round the back. But if you tell them, oh, well, there is a big ball underneath you, and you kind of have to fit the shape of that ball, then they're like, oh, yeah, okay. And it was just a really good work on images and how to tell a story through your word that is going to change your body. Yeah. Again, words and body reaction.
Yeah. And you, so obviously, like you say, you much prefer you'll prefer in-person classes rather than the online.
I do. I like the contact with people. Yeah. I am a contact kind of person. Yeah. I always, and I know a lot of hypnotherapists, a lot of Pilates teachers, a lot of people are very comfortable online. I think to be fair, I think I'm good online. I think my words carry the meaning quite well, but personally, I love the contact. And when I am hypnotherapy, sports therapy, whatever you want, when I see a person coming into my clinic, I have an idea already of what's going to work and not going to work.
Okay.
Just the way they move, the way they behave, especially for the hypnotherapy, you were saying skeptical people are very tense.
Okay. Right,
they ask loads of questions all the time. And you just get a feeling for the person, and then you adapt the session. And I think hypnotherapy is kind of one of those jobs where your intuition is going to do more work than anything else, than your background and the books you read, whatever. It's your intuition, and it's the way you carry over that's important. Pilates maybe a bit less, but I still love talking to people, having that visual, having that, just that feeling. And sometimes people will like me, sometimes people won't like me, but I also think it's important you get both. If they don't like me, then at least, you know, they can choose to leave, and somebody else is going to come, and we're going to have an awesome relationship and do great work together.
Brilliant. I do think the online classes, which were great during lockdown in general, whatever class you were taking, but I would be very much in the kind of camp where when I'm in person with somebody, I will take it all in and I will stay present, whereas online I will start to drift off a little bit. That's just the way my mind works. It's, you know. So we're recording this on a Monday, so we were supposed to do this on Saturday.
Yes.
So tell me then, because I didn't think of it at the time, and then I kind of thought, so you had to take a match.
I was covering a game, yeah.
And you were, it's physiotherapy wise, is it?
Yes, physiotherapy wise, yeah.
And so that's working independently then, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, okay, you have different ways of doing it. You could be with a team for the year, and then, well, you're still working independently, but you kind of have a setup team, and then you kind of follow them, which I would like, but with the lockdown, it was all a bit confusing, to be fair. So most of us kind of ended up covering games. So you kind of, you get contacts, like everywhere you need contacts. And they ask you, there is a game, we need you. And so, I was covering a game in Roscommon. It was St. Bridget's Miners against Pierce or something like that. Right. It was for like the Roscommon Championships.
Right, it was a big game.
Yeah, and they won, so it was great. But I was doing that.
Is it something that you enjoy doing then, the physiotherapy side of things?
I do love physiotherapy. I would be more of a clinic person.
Okay.
I love the one-on-one. I would love to have somebody coming in with a challenge, and I would love to write little programs. I love that. I love that part where I assess. I'm like, oh, that's what's happening. Do those exercises, come back in a week, we do manual work, and then I give you another little program. I love that part. I love following them. I love coming up with exercises. I think it's the best thing. It's so funny.
Yeah.
So I love that. And then on the side, you cover the teams and the games, and that's more first aid.
Okay.
Now, I was with rugby for 3 years, and I've seen awful stuff. So I'd
imagine so, yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting. Okay, you have your adrenaline rush when it happens, but at the same time, it's so much pressure, and you're on the line. And if something bad happens, that's on your back. So it's a lot of pressure. It's less nicing.
Yeah. Is it possible then, this is probably a completely ridiculous question, but is it possible then for you in hypnotherapy, where you are dealing with someone who has persistent pain, and you think that something could work physically for them? Yeah. Would it be something that you'd recommend to them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, ideally in the future, I would like to bring everything together.
Yeah. Okay.
I would like to be able to be, okay, this is what I do. I can work on your mindset. I can work on your body. And I would like to have clients coming in, and I would do maybe half an hour of physical therapy, maybe half an hour of hypnotherapy, or even bring it together. I kind of, I had a few clients where I asked them, would you be willing to kind of mix everything? And what I did was, I did my physical therapy, my massages, my manipulations while into trance.
Okay.
And then they would be in that state. And then I would kind of keep talking and be like, you're feeling very comfortable. This is so relaxing. You can feel my fingers touching your skin, but you're feeling so relaxed. It's okay. Because some people, when they're in pain, especially persistent pain, if you touch them, they're going to cramp right away or tense. There is nothing you can do. You touch the tense. You release the tense. You release the tense. It's endless. So if I put them, which is what I did, I put them in that hypnotic state. I was like, oh, this is so relaxing. Now my fingers are going to touch you, but that's okay, because you can imagine my fingers as like a healing cream, and every time they touch you, your muscle is relaxing. And the muscles were relaxing. And because they were relaxing, I could massage, I could manipulate, and they wouldn't tense right away after. So I was getting more out of my session, because they were allowing me to touch them just because they were into that trance state. So I do think that if you start mixing things up, you would get so much more out of it.
That's a great idea, though, because I would be all for that if I was going into somewhere that if I did have pain, and you could go with my mind, work on my mind and my body at the same time. It'd be perfect. I think, like, do you know, it's actually quite strange, and you've probably come across it before, but that kind of almost memory pain, if you've had a pain somewhere or a scar somewhere and things like that, and like it just reminded me there where you said people tense up. I have a scar, and like if anybody goes near it, it's like immediately. It's obviously not sore. Hasn't been sore for many years, but it's a strange how the body reacts to those kind of things, you know.
But it reacts to it because you have the experience of the scar, and you probably remember what happened. It's probably still a trauma, so your body is reacting to the thought. It's reacting to the trauma, not to the physical. Yeah. Which is why you would need something more like you would need a technique that's more related to the thought than to the body. So that's when hypnotherapy or any other technique related to the thought comes into play. You need to get rid of the thought so that you can get touched without reacting to the thought.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one, because it just reminded me there when you mentioned it. So, Cecile, what do you like to do then in your spare time?
What do I like to do in my spare time? I like to read. I'm a huge reader.
Good.
Yeah, reading. I always loved it. Now, I kind of changed my way of being. I would have been a huge one for going to museums and art galleries. And when I used to live in big cities, right, Athlone is limited, let's be honest, in terms of museums and art galleries. So, I miss it, but that's the way it is. So I would garden a lot, love gardening. I have to walk the dogs all the time. They always need to be walked. I practice my Pilates. I would go for a run. I do ballet dancing now.
Really? Did you do ballet?
Not really. Like as a kid, right. I love to dance. I love music. I love to dance. And again, really hard to find anything in Athlone. And the only thing I could find was a ballet dancing class for adults. So I gave it a go. I'm not very graceful.
Hey, look, you gave it a go.
I gave it a go.
So what books do you like to read then?
What books do I like to read? I go through phases. I have a huge veneration. Can you say that in English? Adoration. Yeah. I'm obsessed with The Lord of the Rings. Yeah. So I would read that pretty much every Christmas. It's just my tradition.
That's a big book to be getting through Christmas. Yeah.
Every Christmas. Yeah. Obsessed. So yeah.
Did you like the films as much as the book then, or?
I like the movies for The Lord of the Rings. I thought The Hobbit was the most horrendous thing that could ever be made. Tolkien would be like completely destroyed over it. But I did enjoy the movies now. But the book, there is nothing that can beat it. It's beautiful.
I read the book once. It's long. It was a good few years ago now. I would have been a teenager, I suppose. But what I find myself reading now, and I probably said it here before, but I find myself kind of reading more non-fiction now. Yeah. It's almost like that look, I'm not old, but like it's that idea of I've read a lot of fiction. I've enjoyed a lot of fiction, but I find that like reading non-fiction is something that's more important now. You know, like learning. It's not so much even just learning about things. It's about just being aware of things that are going on, and it could be politics. It can be you know, it could be about healthcare. It could be about a lot of different things. There's so much non-fiction out there anyway to read. So I don't do it as a kind of a relaxation thing anymore. Do you know what I mean? I used to sit back and like read a book and I'd be chilled and that. Whereas now I'm reading to be informed. Do you get what I mean? Are you more of fiction?
I what is the last non-fiction book I read? Oh, that was good, actually. That was good. I don't read a lot of non-fiction, but it was this guy, and he lives in India.
Okay.
And he writes about his life in India, but it was maybe 20, 30 years ago. So it's hugely different now. But at the time, and it's still a bit like that, but at the time it was just all those mysterious things that was, you know, it's just, he talks about his life, but it's little stories. One of the book was about how the history of New Delhi throughout the ages, and he meets loads of crazy characters and he talks about them. And the other one was how to basically find the different sorts of spiritualities you can find in India, and there is so many. So that was good, but because it told a story. I am a story person. Hypnotherapy is story based. We do a lot of sometimes you can go straight in there and be very direct, and you know, your hand is feeling so comfortable, and oh, you are such a confident person today. You can be very direct and very kind of basic and simple, and sometimes you tell stories. And once upon a time there was a prince, and the story is linked to what you came to see me with, and I'm going to tell the story, but at the same time I'm going to insert little suggestions that are linked to your state, and you get so absorbed in the story they kind of go under the radar, and then they go deeper. So it's storytelling, and I am a story person, and I'm working with quite a few kids right now. And kids stories are the best, because you know, any kind of, if you look at, I don't know, Beauty and the Beast, any kind of animated movies that's aimed at children, there is a little moral at the end, right? That remains with the kids, and that's a bit of the same idea. So with kids, I just write stories, and then I insert things that are linked to what they want to work on. And I'm working a lot with autistic kids right now, and that works fantastic.
Really?
Yeah, stories, they just get hooked. And you get results, and sometimes it sounds like magic, because really I just told you a story.
So were you ever into writing or
always
anything? Oh, okay, right. So that was, when did you write short stories yourself, or was it
I wrote
Did you write
poems.
a novel?
No, I tried. That's the most disappointing thing in my life right now. I never managed to write a novel.
I wrote one and it's terrible. So don't worry about it. It's fine. But you enjoyed the process of writing?
I love writing. I love writing stories. Yeah, always did poems, little short stories. But yeah, novels. Geez, I wish at some point. That's really something I want to.
Well,
do.
I suppose the thing about it, as long as you're not trying to write Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I think that's my issue. I'm aiming for that, basically. Yeah.
So so by the sounds of things, when you're telling kids, obviously stories, they're like, I know every story is fantasy in a way, but I'm talking about Lord of the Rings fantasy. Is that the kind of thing that you're interested in? Yeah,
I would like fantasy. I would like, but not I classify fantasy and science fiction into two things, which is like the copycats of the Lord of the Rings and all the blends. You know, so many books got out that follow the other books, and there is nothing to it. It's just like a recipe, and they follow it, and it's very and there is like everything else, which is like the gold little pepit you're gonna find one day, and it's completely out of this world. And how did they even think about that? And that's what I love. It's just wow.
Yeah, I'd be the same. There's a huge skill in obviously writing fiction, like a huge skill. And you know, when I talk about kind of non-fiction as a thing that I'm really into at the moment, it's very much more to do with somebody just researching constantly. They do have to add their own kind of their own minds and fantasies and skills and all that to the story, but it is based on something that's happened and it goes through. And I just if anybody's listening, want to read a good non-fiction, it's called Killers of the Flower Moon. Check it out, it's great. Scorsese's making it as his next film, and it is a great read. It's about the Native Americans, things like that. But again, it's just like you were saying about the guy in India. It's just learning about different cultures. It's very interesting, fascinating stuff. You hear such horrible histories about these places as well, like about Ireland too. It's everywhere. What are your plans for the future then, Cecile?
I don't know.
That's a heavy sigh.
It is always so I'm just kind of, the clinic is working quite well right now, the hypnotherapy clinic. So I just want to keep going. I love learning. I know some people are very specific and will spend years just doing persistent pain, and that's fair. Like I understand that, but I love challenges, and I do persistent pain, but I would do weight loss, and I would work with kids, and I really think that because I have to research so much, and I have to think about how do I tackle that one problem, what story can I say, what words can I use, then it makes all the other things I work on so much stronger, because I spend so much time researching that kind of aspect of something else that I can actually apply it and make it better that way. So I do think that looking into a lot of things, reading about hypnotherapy for pain, hypnotherapy for smoking, I do think that has helped me a lot to become a better hypnotherapist, because I can see things from so many different angles.
Of course, yeah.
So so I really love what I'm doing right now. So I would like to work more with kids. I find it absolutely fascinating. Really, really love it. I am working on opening a hypnobirthing class, which again was fantastic. So hypnobirthing is basically to help mothers and fathers have the best possible pregnancy and birth experience. Yeah. And it's crazy. It's really good. I did a course recently with a lady, Catherine Graves, in England, and she was the most wonderful human being. Brilliant. She's so smart. So yeah, I'm really, really into it right now. So that's coming within the coming months. I will open a hypnobirthing class now. Yeah. So there is that, and then again, I'm doing the physio on the side. I would like to bring everything together. Yeah. I would like that, but to do that, I think I would need. I'm in the dancing soul right now. I run the room. It's my room and everything, but I would need to have a full kind of clinic, like something that's completely for me, because in the dancing soul you have different therapists, and it's great, and you get to meet people. But I would need a place where I could do my Pilates classes. And then I will have my little clinic for the physio, and then also a little space to do the hypnotherapy. And
brilliant.
Put everything together. But where, when, don't know.
Yeah. Have you got a date for the wedding?
Yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, we do. Well, it was supposed to be in November. But yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And because it's in France.
Right.
Makes it complicated. So we moved it to February.
Okay.
So we don't know. It still might be complicated. We don't know.
It's up in the air at the moment, but it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well,
and it'll be a great day, obviously. Where can people find you, actually?
Where can people find me? So I'm in the Dancing Soul, which is exit 13 of the motorway. There you go. I always say that. It's above the primary care center in Monksland. So that's where I do the hypnotherapy and the sports therapy too. I have my own room over there. I do the Pilates in Westside Yoga. Yep. Or online, if you're interested, I can do private lessons online, even in your house. I have people that go to their house, and we have a cup of tea, and we do Pilates, and it's all fantastic. Yeah. And then I have a website which is called Orange Cloud Hypnotherapy. Just like the name of the business. Yep. I'm on Facebook. I am not on Instagram because I suck at Instagram. And
yeah, I do too. Yeah. Well, I try. I would put all that info up on Wednesday anyways, because just it's easier. It's been brilliant having a chat with you, Cecile.
Same here.
I appreciate you coming out on your day off with your dog.
My dog barking outside.
I'm going to race through this just to get to the end. So we'll say thanks a million to John, to his family and Megan. Thanks to Jer, my mom, my dad, and my grandfather. Listen, we're YouTube, our YouTube channel, the Weekly Wheatley. If you go to that and click subscribe, I think we're on 98 subscribers. So we only need obviously 2 more to get to 100, and that'd be good. It does make a difference, actually. If people don't know, it does make a difference on YouTube, because we'll start going into other people's feeds and things like that. So it'll be worth it for us if people get involved with the podcast and get more guests or whatever, because we've got plans that we haven't revealed yet for the podcast, but hopefully they'll come true. We're also on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. You'll find them all, the Weekly Wheatley, in some variation of the spelling, not the spelling, but the wording, I should say. We're on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Google Podcasts, a couple of others that I never write down, so I don't remember. Thanks again, Cecile. Have a lovely Monday.
I will.
And good. I like the positivity. And thanks to everyone for listening as always. And I will see you Sunday and talk to you next Wednesday. Take care. Bye.
Bye.